Welcome to Kojo's Math Review, Chapter 12. Thank you, Abby, for turning on the camera because it's the first time I'm able to be in front of the camera when it comes on. Alright, so here are some of the terms that you need to know for the test. The word coefficient, and you need to know how to spell it. That's required. What is the coefficient? That's right, it's the number that you're multiplying by the variable. The coefficient like 5x. If you had, the coefficient is 5. Negative 3x, the coefficient is negative 3. 1/2 x, the coefficient is 1/2. If I have just x, the coefficient is 1. Remember that, 1. Now, I'm going to skip down here to inverse. Inverse operations. Remember, that's what allows us to manipulate the equation and move one number to the other side or divide or multiply a number. If we're adding to the variable, then we're going to use the inverse operation of subtraction. Do not say opposite. Opposite is not how you manipulate an equation. That is associated with a number line and a number's distance from 0. The inverse operation is how you manipulate the equation. Inverse operation, not opposite. What's a variable? It's a letter that represents a number, and it's usually the number you're trying to find the answer to that will make the equation true. Now, this is very important. On the test, you need to know the difference between an expression and an equation. Over the last couple of chapters, we've worked quite a bit on that. Put a lot of time and effort into expressions and equations. It's not enough to say on my test that an expression does not have an equal sign and an equation does have an equal sign. Yes, you have to say that, but that's not the end of it. If that's all you put, you're going to lose a lot of points. Because you also have to say that an expression does not have a single answer. It doesn't have equal sign, and it does not have a single answer. It can have multiple answers. Thus, an expression. An equation has an equal sign and therefore one solution. You must remember that. If you don't put both of those things, you won't get full credit on the test. Okay. Now let's go back here. 4 steps to isolate a variable. What does isolate a variable mean? Isolate a variable means to get the variable on a side by itself with a coefficient of positive 1. Don't forget that. Variable has to be on a side by itself with a coefficient of positive 1. The first step we do when we isolate the variable is we look to see if there's anything that we can do to simplify each side of the equation. That's the first step. The second step is to add or subtract a number to isolate the variable. So if it's -7, you're going to add 7 to both sides by using the inverse operation. If it's +10, you're going to use the inverse operation of subtraction and subtract 10 from both sides. So the second step, remember, is to add or subtract a number to isolate the variable. The third step that you're going to do to isolate the variable is you're going to multiply or divide by the coefficient. If it's 3x, you're going to do, that's multiplication, and the inverse operation is to divide. So you're going to divide both sides by 3. If it's 1/2 x, 1/2 stands for division, so you're going to do the inverse operation and multiply both sides of the equation. But that would be your third step. The first step is to simplify each side of the equation by adding or subtracting any numbers. The second step is to add or subtract both sides of the equation to isolate the variable. The third step is to multiply or divide both sides of the equation to isolate the variable. And the fourth step is to check your solution. Go back in and do a mental check to see if you've got the correct answer. If your solution to the variable will make the equation true. Okay, so let's move on to some actual problems to get you ready for the test. Alright, here we have these problems. We have 6 problems, and I want you to pause the video and to do those problems. When you're ready, restart the video and we will go over them. Alright, welcome back. I hope you did well. let's see how you did. All right, so on number 1, it's a fraction with the variable, so you're going to put giant parentheses and you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Don't forget to multiply by the negative. If you need to put 12 over 1, you can do so. So you get x equals negative 48. Number 2, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of negative 5/7, which is negative 7/5. You might have written 7 over negative 5. That's fine, but recognize the negative, it doesn't matter which one it goes with. But you'll notice most of these, some of these have fractions as your answers. Because you can have fractions as your answers. I do not want decimals on the test, but you can give it improper fractions in simplest form, or you can put them in mixed numbers. So x equals negative 28/5. Number 3, you should have gotten x equals negative 2. The inverse operation was division. Number 4, we multiply, we have 2/3 as our coefficient of x. We take the reciprocal, which is 3/2. 2 times 3 and 3 times 2 is 6 over 6, which equals 1. Number 5, some of you might have gotten x equals 32. The 16 is out front. It's being added because it's a positive number, so the inverse operation is to subtract 16, so x equals 0. Number 6 is x equals 29. Alright, let's look at some more problems. Try these problems. Pause the video, do these problems, and then when you're ready, restart it and check them. Alright, let's see how you did. This one was a little bit more difficult because I have the variable in the numerator. Remember, that doesn't mean you multiply by 5 over x. You just multiply by the denominator on both sides. The x has to stay there. Number 1 was x is equal to 50. Number 2 is x is equal to 3/2. Yes, you can write 1.5. I do not want decimals. Number 3, x is equal to negative 3. Oh, that's not right, is it? X is not equal to negative 3. X is equal to negative 8/5. Where did I get negative 3? So x is equal to negative 8/5 there on that one. Okay? It's going too fast. Alright. So, in number 4, we have x is equal to 2/7. And number 5, x is equal to 7. Alright, let's see how we did on the rest of them. Let's go to the last page. I didn't put any word problems on the review video. We've worked extensively, but what I did do is identify the 4 steps you need to do to set up a word problem. Most of the word problems that you're going to have on the test are going to be 2-step equations. So given that, you're always going to look for something that identifies the total. That's the number that the equation is going to be equal to. So the total something, what the money you're trying to raise, the total money you're trying to raise, the total cost it's going to cost you to go into the amusement park, the total budget that you have to work with. Then you want to identify a specific one-time cost if applicable. Applicable means is if it's a one-step equation, you won't have that necessarily. But if you're talking about, I'm trying to do, remember the garden problems, and I'm buying flowers, and I have a one-time cost of tools and fertilizer and stuff like that, well, that one-time cost has to come out of my total budget. So I'm going to add that to that side. So now, you identify a one-time cost. That's going to be added or subtracted on the variable side. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to determine what the x is. What are they asking you? Are they telling you how long is it going to take you to drive somewhere if you're driving 50 miles an hour? So x would be the number of hours or potentially the number of days. It depends on what the question is. So if it's how many flowers can I buy if they're $3 a piece and I have a budget, so I'm going to have to multiply 3 times x because x is the number I can actually buy. So you're going to determine what you're multiplying by the x. What number do you multiply by the x for a total amount? And that's the 4th step. So if you take that time, remember you're going to have to write verbal models. Verbal models are just simply the equation written in words of what they represent. Not like 32 plus 7 times x. That's not a verbal model. It would be the cost of the flowers times the number of flowers I can buy plus my one-time cost of fertilizer and tools equals my total budget. That's a verbal model. So you're going to have a verbal model, an equation. You're going to have to solve the equation showing your work. And then you're going to have an answer with the units. Remember, your equations cannot equal x. That's not an equation. You cannot equal x. All right. Good luck. Study hard. I know you're going to do well on this test. You're going to have a successful test because you've been working very hard on getting ready for this test and doing lots of work in class. What's that, Mr. Al? Yeah. Yeah. He says you're going to do great too. And he says you're actually going to do fantastic. So, have a great night. Keep working, and I'll see you in class.